and welcome to today's episode of the Business Meets Fitness podcast with your hosts Lauren Tickner and James Smith. And today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons and the common mistakes when it comes to full body training. So like we always do every Thursday now, we're going to be breaking down one of the research reviews from Mass. So Mass is a resource that I'm subscribed to, which I could not recommend more for any fitness professional or fitness enthusiast who wants to learn more about training, nutrition, and all the science and evidence-based stuff. So anyway, today we're going to be talking all about that full body training. The link to Mass is in the show notes if you're interested. I definitely recommend subscribing for 1 month at least because it is so amazing. So let's dive into today's episode and make sure you stick around for the end because I have a special freebie that I'm giving away and I think you're going to be really interested in it. So let's get into it, James.
So this week we're going to be doing a breakdown of a study in Mass, looking at the recoverable rates of full body training. We're then going to go into the pros and cons of full body training and how you can apply it to your own training.
So what was the study all about then?
So the study was looking at male participants and their recovery rates post full body training session. They found that after 24 hours, maximal strength was regained by the participants. However, after 48 hours, that's when soreness started to decrease.
So what does that mean for us everyday people or perhaps for somebody who's training a client?
It means that we can basically start to use full body training and increase frequency for the individual much quicker than we first initially thought. We first thought that kind of full body training we'd have to kind of give 48 hours, even up to 96 hours between sessions to allow full recovery and optimal performance. However, this is kind of the first look into the fact that we may be able to train people with a full body approach far quicker.
Okay, so for an average person who's perhaps training in the gym 3 days a week, would it be advised for them to train full body or to do more of kind of a different body part split?
With my clients and with individuals that kind of I speak to in and around a gym environment, if they're kind of looking to train 3 times a week, I start to push them towards a full body training approach. Only because we've got things like maximal recoverable volume, which is the quantity of volume per body part that we can recover from and make kind of optimal progress. And this is kind of if we start hammering a body part each kind of session. So say, for example, we do one session and it's just purely based on it. Even push is probably struggling, whereas if we just focus on chest, then we're kind of looking at, say we train chest on a Tuesday, if we're then only making 2 other training sessions for that week, it's then going to be up to a week before we start training chest again. So I'll start to push clients towards full body training sessions as it increases their frequency per body part over the course of the week, and it also ensures that they're getting enough stimulus over the course of the week per body part.
For sure. So let's just say somebody is training 4 or 5 times per week. Again, would you recommend doing a full body training split?
There's kind of a over between kind of 3 and 4 sessions. When we start getting to 4 sessions, depending on kind of training experience and training age, I then kind of start moving towards an upper lower split rather than a full body training session.
Why would that be?
Mainly because if we get into upper lower, we're still looking at kind of 3 rest days per week, allowing for optimal recovery. And working on upper lower gives us slightly more frequency again per body part, as opposed to full body training. And I'd say there it's kind of difficult. You could still say that people could train with a full body approach. However, I do tend to push them towards an upper lower split. But definitely when we're getting into 5, that's when I'd start then looking to do kind of push, pull, and then a lower body session.
For sure. So here we've been speaking a lot about frequency. Now it would be interesting to kind of just dive in a little bit deeper on that because I've heard in the past that with regards to frequency, it is most optimal to be training each body part at least twice per week. What's your opinion on this and is this why you think that training full body is a really good idea?
It depends again on, we can't make too many assumptions because obviously a lot of things come into play such as training age, genetics, environment that people are placed in.
Okay, so quickly explain this a little bit more. So training age, if your training age, you've been training for a longer period of time, then what's that going to mean?
It's going to mean that you can recover faster from sessions. The joints and tendons and ligaments are going to be more conditioned to kind of weight training and resistance training. Whereas if you're a newbie to the gym, the chances are that you're going to get kind of delayed onset of muscle soreness, also known as DOMS, far worse than someone with an increased training age. So that's going to kind of push you back towards less frequency during each week, if that makes sense. So if you're a newbie to the gym and you're very sore, the chances are that you're going to kind of opt out of a session, which again is where you start pushing someone towards full body training, because if they're dropping out of sessions due to them being sore, then you can push them to full body training as they're still getting the adequate frequency over the course of the week and the stimulus per muscle group. However, they've got more flexibility when it comes to missing sessions if they're sore.
Okay, and so then when it comes to actually setting up a full body session, how many exercises per muscle group are we going to be going for, and how kind of long do you think you need to be spending in the gym?
I'd say we're kind of looking to spend 60 to 90 minutes in the gym, given kind of time periods and time available to each individual. Again, there's individual differences depending on kind of lifestyle factors, how much time people have available and whatnot.
And also, I think it's just important to note quickly, like what we mentioned earlier, when it comes to training age, if you've been training in the gym for a long time, then you're obviously going to need to probably spend a little bit more time in the gym, because you're going to have to cover a bit more volume per muscle group. Isn't that right?
That is very true.
Okay, sure. So then when it comes to number of sets or number of exercises per muscle group, what would we tend to advise?
Well, looking at kind of the research that's out there and what Mike Israel's been saying about kind of maximal recoverable volume, we're looking at kind of between 12 to kind of 16, 17 sets per body part per week. And that's direct work on that muscle group. So, for example, a bench press would be direct chest work, and we wouldn't count that as a direct tricep exercise. So then we're looking at kind of 12 to 15 sets, the top end of that, for kind of experienced lifters per muscle group per week. So then per session, if we're doing 3 training sessions over the course of the week, we're then kind of looking at 4 to 5 sets per muscle group per session.
So if we were to then break down an exact training session, a full body training session, would it look something kind of like 2 or 3 sets of squats, 2 or 3 sets of lat pull down, 2 or 3 sets of shoulder press, 2 or 3 sets of, leg extension, 2 or 3 sets of bench press, something along those lines?
I'd go something very similar to that. However, I would, if we're doing a full body kind of training approach, I'd try and stick more around compound training lifts rather than going so isolated. There's a time and a place for isolation exercises if that's towards the end of your session where you're fatigued. However, I'd kind of set it up along the lines of, we might go 2 sets of squat, 2 sets of RDLs, 2 sets of bench press, 2 sets of pendlay rows or barbell rows, and then start moving into a tiny bit of isolation work per session.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point, actually. I know for sure when I'm traveling, I focus so much on compound lifts because you pretty much get the most bang for your buck. And this is why I always stick to full body training as well. Just because I feel like as someone who trains 4 days a week, I'm able to get the most bang for my buck when it comes to full body training. Is that how you train as well?
It is how I train, because the chance of me missing a session each week due to kind of just being busy or being in the gym all the time with clients are quite high. So I like to structure myself around kind of 4 full body training sessions, allowing me to have the option of missing a session if time constraints kick in.
Awesome. And so then when it comes to negatives or full body training, what are the common themes that you see?
I think a big part of it is, like you kind of initially said, a lot of emphasis on isolation exercises where people are kind of just isolating one muscle group rather than kind of getting the most bang for their buck, like you say, with kind of compound lifts. I'd also say that people try and overcomplicate it. So like if I asked you, where would you put a squat, which muscle group is that directly hitting? People start to overcomplicate it. Same with the deadlift, like what muscle group would you put that under?
Me?
Yeah.
Glutes?
Exactly. So it could be, you could say it's hamstring, erectors, glutes, anything.
Back, yeah, okay.
So people start to overcomplicate it. So kind of what I like to do is I like to say kind of split it into a horizontal push and pull, a vertical push and pull, and then split it into body parts.
That's exactly what I did in the Strength Speed training guide.
Is that actually?
Yeah. Did you not know?
No, I haven't read it.
Oh, thanks.
I've never been sent it.
Thanks for the support. Anyway, so with regards to that, I just think another point is that when we're talking about cons of full body training, I think that sometimes it can get perhaps a little bit boring for some people, because you're constantly focusing on, you have to go in the gym and it can seem like a lot of effort. But then I think you do have to remember, okay, I'm probably doing this full body training because I'm maybe actually going to the gym fewer times per week. Because if you're actually going to the gym, let's just say 5 or 6 days a week, then like as James mentioned before, then perhaps that's when you might want to actually be doing the kind of, more legs push pull split, because it's not going to be as mentally draining, I suppose, or as taxing on your body, because you won't be doing as many compound lifts within that one session. What do you think?
True, I agree. I think another con is definitely if your kind of time availability is looking more of like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you don't like training at the weekend, then it's not going to be optimal for you to start training 3 full body sessions back to back, day after day. Because if you're focusing on compound lifts, you're going to start taxing your central nervous system, and you're not going to be able to recover that quickly. Like we said at the start, and the study in Matt showed, it's kind of after 24 hours maximal strength recovers. However, you're still going to be sore after kind of 48 hours. So if I was going to set one up optimally, I'd kind of start looking at kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and allowing you to have the weekend off, or at least having a day in between sessions. I'd let you get away with kind of having 2 full body sessions back to back, but then allowing yourself 1 to maybe even 2 days between the next session.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, again, it depends on your training age, your training history, and all that stuff. So when it comes to biggest mistakes you see, is I guess the main thing for me, it's going to be the whole isolation thing, focusing way too much on isolation movements. And also, again, like you said, going back to back in your training sessions, overcomplicating everything, and even just hammering yourself when you do these full body sessions. Like, realize that people, I think, often forget that you don't need to go to failure. And we could do a whole entire podcast episode on this. But I think when you're training full body, it can be really, you just feel like you're going in there to absolutely destroy your whole entire body, but it doesn't need to be that way.
No, you're 100% right there. And also the big problem that comes around with kind of full body training is you might do 3 sessions during the week, have optimal kind of full body training sessions, and then you fancy doing another session at the weekend, and then you throw in a load more volume that you didn't need, that you now are struggling to recover from, and you come around to the next week and you can't perform optimally on that Monday morning session that you're about to carry out. So I think it's kind of, you have to be careful with, especially if you want to do an extra session on top of your full body training, how you kind of approach that session. It might be worth kind of then hitting isolation exercises. You might focus on arms if you're a guy, or you might focus on kind of glutes, but more isolation exercises if you're a female.
Hey, but some guys might want to do that.
Yeah, but if they squat properly, they'll have good glutes.
Ooh.
If only they could see them now.
Savage. Huh?
I said, if only they could see them now.
I don't get it.
Well, I squat.
Oh, you meant your glutes. A frightful image.
Yeah, for all of them.
So anyway, I think that's everything. I mean, just to wrap up, I mean, as I said, I do full body training. I like full body training. This is what I put in the Strength Food Training Guide, because I see that it's the most effective way of training when it comes to training 3 or 4 days a week. Obviously, as we mentioned, if you're going for 5 or maybe even 6 days a week, then you won't necessarily want to do the full body training. That's how I would conclude. What about you?
I'd agree. I'd say if you're doing 6 training sessions, you may need to find another hobby as well.
Yeah, I can't believe I used to train 6 days a week. In fact, there was one point in my life where I trained 7 days a week, but that's before I knew about the minimum effective dose. Or
definition, go.
Minimum effective dose, the minimum amount of training volume you could do in order to progress.
Well, there's 2 definitions, but I'll let you have it.
What's the other one?
To make as much progress as you want.
Okay. Fair enough.
Marcus would tell. Anyway,
Massive tangent.
to conclude,
You're taking the reins now.
I did have something and now I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Oh, damn it. The listeners of the Business Meets Fitness podcast are just going to have to wait until next week's episode.
It's going to come back to me.
Okay. Well, we can always put it in now. But I'll wrap up.
There you go. Concluding.
Oh, okay.
Concluding.
Go on.
I think if you're going to do full body training, you need to kind of prepare to kind of get mentally prepared for each session.
Yeah.
I've had times where you kind of look at the session plan and you see squats, and then you see deadlifts, and then you see you've got RDLs as well in the third session. There's always going to be a heavy compound kind of in your training program. So some days you might just not feel it. And you've either got to get mentally prepared or then start to understand how you can kind of restructure sessions to get the same kind of bang for your buck without having to like mentally prepare, warm up, foam roll, stretch for half an hour before your session so that you can perform optimally for these compound lifts. I might be being a wet flannel, but like...
No, I agree for sure. I mean, when I was doing powerlifting, this was the thing that was a massive issue for me, and it made me resent training. And it's also sometimes, when it comes to full body training, it's kind of a lot of effort to warm up your whole entire body. So this can be another thing. If you're someone who essentially wants to go to the gym fewer times per week, then do full body. If you're someone who wants to go to the gym more times per week but for less amount of time each session, then I would say legs push pull. That's my pretty much my wrap up on it. But you want to be hitting each body part 2 times per week really in order to make the most gains possible.
Yeah, and looking between kind of 10 to 12 sets of direct work per muscle group.
Boom, that's all. So that wraps up today's episode. Now, I mentioned the freebie at the beginning of the podcast, and that is a free email training if you're wanting to build an online fitness business. So I've left that linked in the show notes. It's extremely valuable. I've already had some incredible results from people who are saying they've taken action that they never would have taken if they hadn't have signed up to the email training, and they're now pulling in clients and earning a lot more money through their online fitness business than they ever would have if they hadn't have signed up. So we've already been getting some amazing results through that. And also just make sure to check out Mass if you haven't already. I think you're going to absolutely love it. And then I've also left a link to both mine and James's Instagrams in the show notes, because we'd love to hear from you about what you think about these episodes, and even leave us a review. Yeah. So it's been a good episode.
I'd love a review.
Yeah, James wants his first review, so leave him a review, please.
It has to be 5 stars plus.
5 stars plus, that's a big ask. 5 stars plus a share on the Insta story. So thank you everybody for listening. We will see you next week.
Can we go to bed now?